Very much. We are called to order on time, and we have a lot to get through, but actually I think we're very doable. Before we get to our special presentation, I need to do bill introductions, and I'm going to begin with myself with 26 RS 2767, which is a trailer bill to the Blueprint for Literacy. And I also, is there any objection? Seeing none, the bill is introduced. I also have 26 RS 3160, and that is a trailer bill to the Risk Accountability Plan. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the bill is introduced. Representative Proctor, I think you have something for us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I would like to request introduction of RS 3252. It is a bill to combat foreign adversary influence in our universities, money, cultural centers, things like that.
Thank you very much. Is there objection to the bill? Seeing none, you are introduced. Does anyone else have any bill introductions? Remember, Monday is your last day. 26 RS 2767. You're very welcome. So before we begin to work our bills, you'll notice we updated the agenda. We have some special guests with us that I really have enjoyed getting to work with, who are part of either a member of or working with the America 250 Kansas Commission, and they have been working so hard on gathering resources for teachers that we wanted to invite them to here today, and I thought Kansas Day would be a great day to do it, to tell us a little bit about what's available for teachers. So Kara and Casey, would you guys like to come to the microphone, please? Kara is working on podcasts for us, so she's a good friend of the commission, and Casey is the State Board of Education's Casey, step on up, because we set this up to give you a picture, and we'll play show and tell in just a minute. The plushie is Semi-Quinn the bison, and maybe the other side of the room would like to see him as well. And for a donation to the commission's efforts, you too could have Semi-Quinn, and Semi-Quinn is learning about civics today here in our capital. So Casey is the State Board of Education's representative to the commission as a history teacher in Kansas, and Casey happens to hail from Sedgwick County, and I cannot brag enough on the fantastic job that he has done. So which two of you would like to just very briefly start for us?
So I'm just going to briefly explain the podcast, and then Casey will talk about the educational resources.
Sounds very good.
I will say that the only reason I can say Semi-Quinn Centennial is because of Semi-Quinn the bison. So, helpful that way. So as Representative Estes mentioned, I'm Kara Heitz. I'm a historian. I do historical media production, and I'm working with the Kansas 250th Commission on a podcast telling stories from Kansas history connected to some of the themes in the Declaration of Independence. The podcast will launch the first week of March, and some of our early episodes include Eisenhower's farewell address, the 1893 Legislative War, which, happened here. Tractorcade in 1979, when Kansas farmers participated in a tractor protest in D.C. And then also John Brown's sort of last trip to Kansas, where he helped liberate 12 enslaved. It started out 11, ended up being 12. A baby was born. 12 enslaved individuals, and took them all the way up to Detroit. So Casey is going to talk about how every single of the 20 episodes we're releasing between March and November of 2026 will have educational resources. So there'll be primary sources and a curriculum guide for teachers that they can utilize. So I'll turn it over.
So I am Casey Meyer. I do have a fancy name tag that says Kansas Department of Education, but my day job is Campus High School down in Hayesville. So in terms of the education aspect, the stuff that's kind of coming around, we're going to be, I'd say the flagship of the Kansas 250 Commission piece will be the podcast. And so we're super excited, not only for just listeners to the podcast, but how we can get it in the ears of our teachers and our students, and utilizing some lesson plans, creating those. We'll also be creating those with some different teachers from around the state. We've got the State Social Studies Conference coming up in February, actually here in Topeka, so we're excited to be doing that. In terms of other aspects that we've been working on, so we have 4 different professional learning communities that are set up kind of around the state. Talking, I was actually yesterday out in Salina. We go out to Oakley, Sublette, just all over the place. And what we do is we bring teachers in together and we highlight just kind of best teaching practices. But for the past, I would say 6 months, and then going on this entire year, about a quarter of every day is spent on kind of Kansas 250 stuff and doing those pieces. I'm also excited about a project called Project Links for Kansas teachers. It's 3rd through 8th grade teachers, and we selected 50 of them from around the state, and they'll be getting together a few times during the year. This year, they're also going to go to Boston and kind of see the whole Revolutionary War aspect. So it's awesome. We're getting teachers to the places to learn about the aspects and then bring that back to their students. So we're quite excited about that. Anything else from you, Kara?
Would you like to talk a little bit, or maybe I should bring Rosa up to talk about America's Field Trip and kind of explain what that is. But we handed out, and if we can take the extras, we need to put them on the table by the door. We have different themes each month. So if you were thinking about ways that you might want to celebrate and you need help brainstorming, January was Kansas' birthday, February is Love in the Air, March is Poetry and Music, April is about growing, May is National Teacher Day, June is Flag Day, July, of course, is America's birthday, August is about being a community servant. We have some volunteer activities, and September is about 25 years since 9/11, October, kind of thinking about Halloween. When I think about how Halloween has changed over the last 250 years from non-existence to as big as it is, that's interesting. In November, it's about thankfulness, and December is about the Boston Tea Party. If you notice on the back, we have a QR code that takes you to our website, and there's a whole big tab. And we will also be bringing in some amazing special documents to the Eisenhower Presidential Museum and Library that are rare and very rarely ever leave DC. I did try to make a play for like a big one, and because in 1976 they took the train with documents around the U.S., and they said, "That's nice, lady, but we're never letting those leave the building again." But I tried, because those would have been fun to have in Kansas. One of the really cool experiences that we've been able to give kids is America's Field Trip, and Rosa is the executive director or the project manager and all things of our commission, and also a former school board member, so she's had a heart for these things. So she's been a big champion of America's Field Trip. Would you like to tell us about that?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So America's Field Trip is talking about all the ways that kids love America. And so it's from grades 3rd through 12th, where they are asking them to write a sentence, they could write a short poem, or they could draw a photo or a picture of why they love America. And there will be 250 winners across the country. Kansas is finally off the naughty list. We have submissions now, and they will be taking submissions until March 5th. Then those winners will be announced. And those students who win will get to take a trip anywhere that they choose that is part of America's Field Trip. So it could be to the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, it could be to the National Mall, it could be to Yellowstone, to the Grand Canyon. So there are tons of places that have been chosen that it is a trip for a student and a guardian to go on this trip and kind of see what they want to see at America 250's expense. So it's a great opportunity. We had 2 students who won last year. Both were from the Wichita School District, so congratulations to them. We had 2 students the year before, which were from the Valley Falls area, so congratulations to them. And on our website, you can see a few photos that the students from across the state had shared with us, so we could share those on our website. So I invite you to definitely check those out, but please let your teachers and your superintendents know that this is a great opportunity for students to get out and see America and tell us why they love being an American. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our conferees? Seeing none, thank you so much. And the next speaker may appreciate it if we take Semi-Quinn down. Thank you, guys. So now we will get directly to business, but we have one business item to sneak in. Did we add approving the minutes to the agenda for Monday? Okay. Okay, so Michelle will be sending out some minutes, and we'll be catching up on approving minutes on Monday, so you know to be on the lookout. So now we are going to get through our bills, and the first bill that we are going to call up is HB 2420. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong list. We are going to start with 2485. And our first conferee is Elaine Frisbee. I'm sorry. I get in a rush to catch back up, and I leave Jason out. And Jason, we couldn't function without you, so that's really poor on my part. Jason, would you like to explain the bill, please?
Madam Chair, in this case, I think your conferee may be able to explain this bill better than I can, but I will give you a very brief synopsis. House Bill 2485 is a bill requested by the Board of Regents to amend one statute 74-32, 313. This was the statute that authorized the State Board of Regents to recover reasonable costs in collecting repayment obligations for those students who had failed to meet the requirements under their scholarship agreements to receive their scholarship amounts, and then were in repayment obligations. House Bill 2485 extends that authority to also grant the Chief Executive Officer of the Board of Regents the authority to negotiate and settle any repayment obligations that have arisen. So in trying to collect and receive those repayment obligations, there can be negotiations and settlement with the student who is in an obligation situation. There's also a provision that makes a student ineligible while they are under a repayment obligation to receive any funds under any of these scholarship programs that have these repayment obligations associated with them under Chapter 74 and then in Article 32 of the statutes. This change will go into effect on July 1st. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the reviser? Seeing none, Jason, thank you very much, and apologies again. And Ms. Frisbee, you are up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reviser Long did a great job explaining this. This is a bill that the Board of Regents is asking for your consideration today. It has essentially been triggered by the volume of more activity we have from our scholarship program known as the Promise Act. So the point would be to give us the 2 authorizations, one which would be to settle repayment amounts that arise when a student does not fulfill their obligations in their service agreement, and we must then track their account on an individual basis, month by month, year by year, until it's satisfied. There does come a point where it does seem more cost-effective to be able to settle those amounts. I have an example that staff provided me. We have several students in the Promise Act. They owe us $164, $206, and so the expense for our agency to continually monitor and track and try to reach out to them does grow over time. We would rather devote our time and attention and resource to settling for what we can extract and then recouping those dollars for our scholarship programs and then moving on, essentially.
So you reach a point Your collections cost you more than what you're collecting. Okay.
Correct. Thank you, Madam Chair. The other point of the bill, staff brought up a point where we do have students now, I believe it's a handful of students, but they are in repayment for one of our service scholarships, but they are also applying for and receiving scholarships in other service programs. And so we wanted to bring this to your attention, and if it is the intention of the legislature to allow that to continue, then we can, but in the bill, we thought that perhaps you'd want to consider prohibiting someone who has failed to meet their service obligation in one program from then starting up in another one that we administer at the board office. So wanted to bring that to your attention as well. Be happy to stand for questions. That's essentially the effect of the bill.
Thank you very much. Questions for the conferee? Representative Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing here. Just out of curiosity about how much more is it cost, just curious on if you had those financial numbers. Perhaps I missed it.
Well, we do have several thousand folks in repayment now. The best way that I trended this information out, Madam Chair, in 2019, fiscal year 2019, for our service programs, our agency spent a total of $539 to our third-party vendor that helps us service those repayment amounts. In 2025, that amount has now exceeded $11,000. So that gives you the expansion of our trending and the number of students that we're having to now service.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions for the conferee? Representative Pishney?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. I didn't see any attachment with regard to some of the statistics that you were referencing just now, and maybe I've missed it and so forth. But I heard you in your oral testimony saying there's a $200 amount, a $100 amount, and I get it on those very small amounts. But what do you consider an amount before it would be collected by the executive of the regents? At $1,000, or I'm having a little trouble understanding what where the parameters would be, for lack of a better phrase.
Thank you, Representative. Madam Chair, if I may. So we did not have a dollar amount, a certain dollar amount in mind. So in many cases, the students are working with us in establishing their repayments, and they are cooperative, as you might say, in terms of working out. They understand their service obligation. For whatever reason, they chose not to fulfill it or weren't able to fulfill it. And they are cooperating and doing their repayments. Other students are less cooperative and less communicative. And it reaches a point where not only do we then service them with a vendor for tracking their account, but then we must then go into collections. And the expense then starts to bloom for us, and our opportunity for recovery of those dollars diminishes. So I'd almost have to punt and say it's on a case-by-case basis for us as to what the student situation is and what our costs are that we're going to incur. And I would be happy to give some information like the trend table that I have in front of me. I'd be happy to give you that.
It would help me understand it a little bit better, but that's not important. I mean, it's not that important for me making a decision on this. But Madam Chair, my concern is I'm one that feels like we need to hold people accountable rather than letting them off the hook. But I also understand the dollars and cents, and when does it become a case where we are spending way too much time and money in order to collect. So I'm trying to balance that in my mind, but and it leads to your other thing about the bill. No, I don't think somebody should be allowed to apply for something else if they haven't fulfilled that first obligation. But to the point you're testifying right now, we need to hold them accountable. And so I'm trying to figure out, is that to the final $200, or where is that? So anyhow, that's my point and why I asked the question, Madam Chair, and thank you for your indulgence.
Vice President Frisbee, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so one thing I would want to highlight, there are procedures for state agencies to go through the process with the Department of Administration for writing off accounts receivable. So this becomes a financial reporting problem for us when we have to keep track of these in the state's financial reports. There are examples in the statutes for the Department of Aging and Disability Services and the Veterans Services Office, as well as, I'm sure, the Department of Revenue, where they have that authority to make those decisions internally on a case-by-case basis, and so that is what we are trying for today.
Representative Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to piggyback off that. So if you do forgive something, is it just wiped off their accounts, or does it ever follow them to show that they were negligent on repayment of something?
Madam Chair, if I may, I believe it would be written off. If it doesn't go all the way to collections, then it's just gone, and there's not a record of it in terms of their credit account, or their credit report, for example. And our Director of Financial Aid may correct me if I'm wrong there. To the point of holding people to account, that is our responsibility to track and monitor those students. And to the extent that they don't fulfill their payment obligation to us, then we fall short of having dollars to offer to future students to then go offer more scholarships to our institutions. So we do view this as there's a cost to this, us doing this, and we're so.
And my thing is just if something happens to, say he pays and I don't, and I say, I'm off the hook, they forgave it and I have nothing, does that get out, and then you're less likely to get payment from someone else if they know there's not really a responsibility or any repercussions because they didn't?
Madam Chair, we would consider this information private information, so on a case-by-case basis, we wouldn't be publishing that information per se.
No, I'm just talking about other students.
Word of mouth.
Yeah,
Word of mouth?
I know how students are.
If I may, Madam Chair, word of mouth, our judgment would then apply to each individual case. So if somebody owes us $50 for us to then go trail them for several years to try and capture it, but somebody else owes us $10,000 or $20,000, that's going to be a completely different calculation.
Representative Chauncey, and then I think we probably might need to move along, but I do have a question for the revisor after that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification for me, I guess, is this just all the fees that are associated with collections of this and negotiation, or is this the entire loan amount that's negotiable through the director? So you can you write the whole thing off if you choose to? Is that what we're voting on, or are we just voting on the fees?
Representative, Madam Chair, yes, that is correct. The entire amount.
Entire amount, okay.
You guys don't see yourselves writing off the entire amount?
Yes.
You mean the entire amount left, not the entire
Yes.
initial amount? Thank you. And we do have a couple of new members on the committee who are not familiar with the scholarship. And I just wanted Jason to explain that in case you're concerned that, well, what if somebody was hurt or whatever, is there room for grace? And I wanted him to explain kind of the hardship provision that's in existing law.
As Madam Chair, members of the committee, a number, if not all of these programs do have a hardship provision. So if there is difficulty in making the repayment obligations, there is an opportunity to apply to the regents for allowance for that.
That is correct, and we do have procedures for doing so.
And there's not overly strict, but not overly generous. You don't just hand them out like.
No, ma'am.
Right. Thank you. All right, last call for questions for the conferee. Representative Boatman.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of focus on scholarships and grants, but I noticed the language in the bill says, find it here, other student financial aid program established, so on and so forth. Would this bill also capture student loans as they're traditionally thought of?
Representative, Madam Chair, no, this would not. This would only affect the 10 scholarship programs that we administer that carry a service requirement.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And if you're not familiar with the service scholarships, they usually involve committing a certain amount of time working in Kansas afterwards. So that's what we're talking about. I should have had Jason explain that too. Sorry. Revisor Long.
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, the language is worded the way it is, so not only does it encompass the 10 existing, but if the legislature were to create an 11th service scholarship program, that would fall under these provisions as well.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. And you get a short break there, Vice President Frisbee. Jason, I close the hearing on 2485, and we will move into a hearing on 2487, and Jason will explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, House Bill 2487 is another bill that was requested by the Board of Regents. This one amends Statute 74-3284 with respect to one scholarship, the Kansas Education Opportunity Scholarship Program. Under this program, to be eligible, a person must be a Kansas resident, be accepted and enrolled in an educational program at an accredited institution, have established financial need, and then either be a first-generation student, post-secondary education, or have a parent who is employed as a teacher or paraprofessional in Kansas in any of the grades pre-kindergarten through 12. House Bill 2487 goes to that last qualification for a student who's eligible and would establish a definition of who is a teacher or paraprofessional in Kansas. That definition appears on page 2 of the bill. It is any individual who is an employee of a unified school district or under the employ of a non-public school located in Kansas whose primary employment duties consist of providing classroom instruction to any student in those grades pre-K through 12, or who provides instructional support to those students in pre-K through 12. And then there is a caveat in this that an individual is not to be considered an employee employed in Kansas as a teacher or paraprofessional unless the administrator for the building in which that person works certifies to the State Board of Regents on a form provided by the State Board that the individual satisfies these provisions. So there's a certification requirement in there for the person to be certified as meeting that standard definition. And so that'd be just a requirement for the student seeking eligibility for the scholarship amount if they're not a first-generation student going to college. This change will go into effect on July 1st. If enacted, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we will call on our first proponent, Vice President Frisbee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Revisor Long has thoroughly explained the bill. We are requesting this bill to help us as staff for this particular program get clarity on what the legislature wants to designate as eligible applicants for this program. So as the program began in 2024 and we launched it, we began fielding questions and applications from students whose parent was employed. They're employed by a district, but it wasn't absolutely clear that they met the definition. And so we did make an attempt to set some parameters in the bill on page 2, lines 4 through 15, for this scholarship program, which is not a service scholarship in this case. It is more of a true scholarship in the sense that it is a grant to a student to go attend a public or a private institution in our state. So there's language there, and again, Revisor Long explained the distinction, and so this was our attempt to make that help us make that distinction for us.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the conferee? Y'all are quiet today. Okay, you did a very good job in your presentation. Our next conferee is Timothy Graham. So that was really intended to be written only, maybe? Okay. I have also proponent written testimony from Matt Lindsay, and I do not see him here. So I believe that is all the testimony I have. Is there any other testimony that we might have missed? And seeing none, we will close that hearing. And part of the gig of being a vice chair is you get a chance to hold the gavel and lead a bill and get practice at hopefully being a chair one day, because we don't stay here forever. So the next bill I am going to turn over to Vice Chair McNorton. And I'll be your vice chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item on agenda is House Bill 2486, a potty train bill, and Revisor Long, would you explain it, please?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2486 deals with attendance in public schools under the state of Kansas. It amends one statute, 72-3118, which generally provides for the ages at which a child can be enrolled in public school. There would be a new provision added to this. Subsection E on page 2, it's actually most of page 2 of the bill, that provides that a school district cannot enroll a child in kindergarten if that child is not toilet trained. The school district would be required to obtain a written assurance from the child's parent that the child is toilet trained, as the bill is written. The bill also goes on to require school districts to adopt policies and procedures for determining when a child is not toilet trained, and to take action when they make that determination for a child that's been enrolled in the school. The bill states that the student may be determined to be not toilet trained if accidents happen with such frequency as to impact the educational experience of the student or their peers. And then there are options for the district to follow under those policies and procedures, including considering whether or not the student should be evaluated or reevaluated for an exceptionality, whether the student and their family should be referred for counseling or to a social worker to address additional family supports and resources, whether the parent should designate an adult to aid the student in using the restroom facilities at school, and then finally, whether or not the district should remove the student until they have become toilet trained. There are exemptions from these general provisions for students who have an IEP or a 504 plan, or students who have a medical condition that's been verified by a physician or mid-level practitioner. Finally, there is a definition in the bill of toilet trained. You can see that in the bill. These provisions would be enacted on July 1st if the bill passes, and with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions or discussion with the revisor? Seeing none, we'll move on. Elaine has some information on from KLRD about the physical note.
Thank you, Elena Rutter with Legislative Research. According to the fiscal note prepared by the Division of the Budget on the bill, the Department of Education indicates enactment of the bill would have no fiscal effect on state aid to school districts or on administrative costs to the agency. And the Kansas Association of School Boards indicates enactment of the bill would increase school districts' administrative costs, but they are unable to estimate the fiscal effect.
Thank you. Any questions for Elaine? All right, we will move on. First on the proponents list is Sherry Brantley, Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I prepared this for Madam Chair, but we'll move on. Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. Everyone take a deep breath. My amendment will be to remove 3D of the bill, which would take out the language of removal and reintegration from the bill. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I am Representative Brantley. I'm here for support for House Bill 2486. In this, I speak of support. The bill is not about denying access to education. It's about early support and intervention so every child can start kindergarten safely, confidently, and ready to learn. By setting a clear readiness expectation while also establishing compassionate pathways for families who need help, we strengthen both student outcomes and classroom conditions. House Bill 2486 recognizes that children enrolling in kindergarten should be toilet trained, but that doesn't always happen. And they carefully define toilet training, which means a child can communicate the need to use the bathroom, use the toilet independently, and manage personal hygiene, including changing clothes after an accident. Equally important, the bill respects and protects children with disabilities or medical conditions by providing explicit exceptions for students whose needs are documented through an IEP, a Section 504 plan, or a verified medical condition. The bill also directs school districts to adopt support policies that consider whether toileting delays may indicate an exceptionality, and then refer families to support workers, social workers, or counselors to aid in this support. And they also assist in a plan to assist the child at school. The amendment, after the language is removed for removal and reintegration, underscores the bill as purely support first, not exclusionary. Why does this matter for learning? Because decades of longitudinal research demonstrate that early identification and support improve academic trajectories. Children who receive timely developmental assistance in early grades are more likely to meet grade level benchmarks by third grade and maintain stronger literacy and numeracy growth thereafter. When classrooms are not off task for routine hygiene emergencies, teachers can protect instructional time, a critical driver of achievement, and students benefit from consistent, uninterrupted learning. The health rationale is just as compelling. Aligning kindergarten readiness with independent toileting is a practical component of a broader hygiene framework for schools. There's also a child safety and dignity component that deserves attention. Toileting regression can be a signal of developmental or medical needs, and in some cases of psychosocial stress, trauma, or neglect. The American Academy for Pediatrics advises responding to toileting difficulties with supportive, non-punitive damages. By requiring districts to consider exceptionality and to connect families with social workers and counselor support, the bill creates an early, trauma-informed pathway to help identify underlying needs, engage families compassionately, and when necessary, activate protections for the child. This bill stresses safeguards from abuse, which are strengthened under the Support First approach. Kansas already requires mandatory reporting of suspected child abuse or neglect, and school personnel are part of that safety net. Clear district procedures for responding to toileting concerns, combined with trauma-informed practices, help staff recognize potential red flags and follow required reporting protocols promptly and appropriately. The bill also addresses an underdiscussed area, student privacy and teacher liability when staff are asked to assist with pull-ups or diapers. These intimate care tasks, when performed in classroom settings, in a bathroom, maybe in the classroom or exiting, can introduce privacy and safety concerns for the child and create legal risks for educators who may not be trained or authorized for such care. Some districts often rely on safeguards such as a two-person president, documented consent, or clear protocols that protect students and staff. By reducing the frequency of scenarios that require intimate care in kindergarten and replacing them with family-centered supports, this bill minimizes exposures to these risks, preserves student dignity, and lets teachers focus on instruction. In short, readiness plus support is safer, smarter path than for for care for intimate toiletry in the classroom. I want to emphasize the amendment removal and reintegration language makes the bill intent unmistakable. Schools are to partner with families, not exclude children. Social workers and counselors connect caregivers to practical strategies and local resources. School nurses or pediatric providers help rule out medical causes and advise on supported plans. Special education teams evaluate services when appropriate. The goal is success in kindergarten now, so that children don't face compounding setbacks later. Passing HB 2486 reaffirms our commitment to a safe, healthy, and reasonable classroom for students and teachers. It protects instructional time, strengthens hygiene and attendance, supports trauma-informed identification needs, and reduces privacy and liability risks associated with intimate care tasks. Most importantly, it gives families the guided assistance they need so their children can thrive from day one. Thank you for your consideration, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Rep. Brantley. Of course, when we work this bill, we'll have a copy of, assuming the amendment you're talking about. So I appreciate you letting us know that up front, but there obviously will be an amendment coming at some point, it sounds like. So any questions from the Rep. Featherston? Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell us how widespread a problem this is?
Thank you for your question. I really was alerted to this past year as I traveled around the state, even in other states, from teachers saying that they've had children even up as second grade in pull-ups and such, and that they wish there were more supports out there for the families to help them with additional toilet training skills at home and to get them to school.
Thank you for the follow-up. So there are 500 children in my local grade school. How many can you report to us would be having an issue that they couldn't manage on their own?
Part of this is an intimate discussion point with families, and it's a great question. And some of it, I believe, is kind of a silence that the families don't want to bring that attention to themselves. And so getting those extra supports would bring that out. As far as confidentiality, I don't know that they could actually report that to us right now.
Representative Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered what are some of the current methodologies that are used without this bill, and then how would this bill add in, just in your basic knowledge? I listened, but I just wanted to see if I could get it a little clearer exactly what this is saying. So my question restated is, what do you feel like the current practices are when a student comes in and is not potty trained? And now what would this bill add in layman's terms for me?
Thank you for the question. That's a great one. In speaking about students that are on IEP and such, when they use the restroom and maybe need a changing, the doors are locked in the restroom and an adult goes in with the student and changes them at that point. And there could be more than one adult. So I think it varies across from school district to school district.
Thank you for the follow-up. Yeah, it seems like it could take, quite a bit of staff and education time that, this is something I'm trying to work on even before school on a different way. So I'm very interested in this bill and go from there. Thank you.
Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doesn't the State Board of Education or our local school boards already have policies in place for this sort of thing?
So the policies that are in place would be for IEPs, 504s and such. I don't know of any that are in place for those that are not on an IEP 504 or medical exemption.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear from some local school boards and State Board of Education when possible. possible, right time.
Representative Pishney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And part of my question was answered, but it was a two-part question, and the other was partially answered to the previous representative's question. Being a local, an advocate for local government and for local control, it appears to me that this should be a local control issue. So my question is this, and you referenced there's a number of people within Kansas, other states that have mentioned something to you about this being an issue, but have they asked for the state to come in and solve the problem, or are they willing to allow the whatever 300 districts or however many we have in Kansas to solve it themselves on an individual district basis, whatever works best for them?
Thank you for the question. That's a great one, Representative Pishney. I think at that point, that would probably be information coming from the state and to know what they have put in place. But from what, working with the teachers and such, that's what I've been told.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Smoy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, what does this look like as far as delayed start for kids? What age generally are kids going into kindergarten?
According to statute 72-3118, by August 31st, 5 years old to enter kindergarten. The parents can also choose if they want to enter their student at 6. It's up to parent control at that point, and they have to be in school by 7.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Ruiz, excuse me, Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I've heard you reference IEPs and 504s. Can you, for layman's terms, non-educated,
Yes.
explain that, please?
So an IEP is an instructional educational plan for a student, and if they have been identified with a disability, the team will have an instruction plan put together for them, detailing out what the minutes that they need, the different goals set for them for that year. A 504 is for a student that is not, this testing does not identify a disability, but they know they see a disability, so the district, it's not funded, but the district would have to go ahead and put that in place.
Sure.
So when this is identified in the schools from the children that are there, when would the parents be notified? And getting back to Representative Starr's goals, isn't there already something in place that kind of identifies and helps those markers before the children enter kindergarten?
So some students will come in from independent, like preschool, or some preschools are within the district. So it kind of depends how the student would come into the school. What was the other half of your question? Oh, okay, so they would come into school, and sit teams are very popular. So if a teacher is seeing needs with a student, they can refer them to that and such. But toiletry is an immediate concern, and concern for the student and the teacher.
We have Rep. Steele, and we'll need to move on after this.
Thank you,
Representative Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, just trying to wrap my head around teachers in the classroom needing to handle, sounds like a consistent issue, not an accident, because accidents happen with young kids. I mean, it's just is the nature of being in school. But if this is a consistent issue, I'm concerned about teacher liability and exposing of children. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if it's consistently happening, the teacher's stopping and giving toiletry needs and intense care to them. And if a teacher would have to go to another room, then someone has to cover the classroom. Or if it's in a bathroom that maybe is locked, what kind of liability does the teacher have or the student? So I think some protection there would make sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Representative Brantley. We have written in our packet from Claudia Fury Aguirre, I don't know, yeah, I'm pretty close, with Aligned. Moving on to opponents, we have Leah Fleiter with KSAB, or KASB. I like that. CASB.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Great to be here. We are appearing today as opponents on House Bill 2486. You have my written testimony in front of you as always. I'm Leah Fleiter with the Kansas Association of School Boards. We oppose the bill as noted in our written testimony. Toilet training, as has been discussed by the proponent, is an intimate issue. Our members in our legislative policy would direct us, I think, to oppose this because it's more about the relationship between the parent and the child, and then also how the local school district, to Representative Pichney's point, works with the parents to make sure that the kids are ready to enter school and to learn in an appropriate manner that helps everyone. We are also concerned about the provision about excluding kids from kindergarten. I appreciate the representative's amendment. I would look at still on page 2, line 6, where the section says that districts may exclude kids from kindergarten. The issue I think it's worth discussing there is we talk a lot about reading and how important those K through 3 ages are, that kind of age band in there. The more kids we have held out of kindergarten for toileting issues, the more kids we have at a risk of not getting to where we want them to be in our literacy efforts by the time they're at about 3rd grade age. So we're talking, again, concerns about parental control and parental relationship with the student, and also then achievement. We are also concerned about potential litigation costs if children are excluded from kindergarten strictly because of toilet training issues. And then we note also in our testimony that we, again, are concerned that this would likely be an unfunded mandate because of the potential litigation. And again, you know, special education is not fully funded. And so we would ask that the legislature not impose another unfunded mandate on public schools. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Fleiter. Any discussion or questions for Representative Smoy?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I understand from being in the elementary school previously, what we're talking about here is the consistent issue with the toileting instead of just accidents, because clearly accidents, especially in kindergarten, do happen. How are teachers handling that right now? Because I know that we do have a stress of not enough paras to go around, especially in those situations. So how is that handled with one teacher in a class?
You know, I, as a representative of a school board and a former board member, I don't have the details on how the teachers handle that. I would imagine as a parent, there might be an awful lot of kids using some sort of pull-up. I'm not trying to do a sponsorship here, but you know, a pull-up or some sort of aid. So I would imagine there's some sort of process, as the proponent mentioned, of, you know, potentially changing the kids. But I think what we're really concerned about, Representative, is the unintended consequences of the way this is written, that kids can be excluded from school.
Right, and I agree with you. I don't want kids excluded from school. Does the school board have a recommendation for the local boards on how to address this, how to handle this?
We haven't specifically had this come up in legislation. It's not in our legislative platform, if that's what you're asking. There are a raft of guidances that we give our districts, and again, I'm not clear on the specificity of this specific on this topic, but there is a lot of work that has gone on for decades, making sure that teachers and parents and students are working together to make sure kids are met. So I don't know if it's toileting and consistent accidents are specifically addressed in a document somewhere, but we have a lot of guidance around how to make sure everybody is having a successful kindergarten experience.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have your member boards come to you saying they're having a problem with this? This being un-toilet trained kindergartners?
We have not received that feedback at any of our meetings. We meet with our members around the state every summer and fall. About 2,000 miles on the cars. That is not something that's come up in our, when we ask folks for their input on what should our platform be in 2026. I know the counties and the League of Municipalities, they all do similar meetings. I could check my notes, but I don't recall hearing anything about that.
I have a question. Do you know, and this might be for Jason, can a local school district adopt a statute or a regulation like this without having, as an individual USD? Could they make this part of their requirement to go to kindergarten?
I'd have to defer to the reviser on that, but I would also have a follow-up comment on that if Mr. Chair, if it's okay to.
Jason, if you could, please.
Mr. Vice Chair, just for clarification, are you saying could a local school board adopt a policy to prohibit enrollment of a child who was not toilet trained?
Yes.
I think any such policy by a school district would potentially meet with some legal challenges and denial of a public education to a student.
Thank you for your clarification. Your comment, Ms. Fleiter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was actually going to be my follow-up I was concerned about access to public education, but I did not attend law school, so I appreciate Revisor Long.
All right. Anybody else have any? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, we don't have any other orals. We have 4 or 5 in your packet written from the Families Together, Children's Alliance of Kansas, Disability Rights Center of Kansas, Kansas School Nurses Organization. So we will consider the hearing on HB 2486 closed. I do have a little need to back up here just a minute. On the first 2 bills we heard, we do have a report from KLRD on the, I'm going to give it back to the chairwoman. Never mind.
It's my mistake, so I'll fix it. I forgot to do the fiscal notes on the first 2 bills, and you did a very good job. Is that first time you've done a bill hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you did great. Good, very good job. The fiscal note on both of the previous bills was negligible. We are all having a pronunciation issue today. I should have had some of the Kansas Day cake. We would be talking better. A negligible fiscal impact on both of those bills, and they are posted on the bills page. Just to go very quickly through next week, the one thing I left off the agenda for Monday, that is our last day for bill introductions. We will have some minutes to approve. we always get feedback. It's difficult to get testimony in for Monday bills, so we'll be working some bills that we have heard already on Monday. And the rest of the week, it's very possible that we will have action on bills previously heard. Is usually as soon as I decide that I'm going to do that, I adjust the agenda, but always be prepared for any bill, because the way we juggle things around here, it can get moved pretty quickly. So, and Friday, I have us down on the call of the chair, and at this point, I think it will be unlikely, and I will work very hard to try, and this is why you may have action on a bill on another day, try to have us not have any votes on Friday, because on Fridays, I don't want to force you to be in the building to vote on something, since the law is you must be here in the building in order to vote. So bear with us. Thank you all so much for a great year so far. And we are adjourned half an hour early unless anybody has anything else. We are adjourned.